Is it true that you can train your sense of smell? Not only is it true, but there's benefits beyond smelling. Hi, I'm Jonathan from Memories, and I teach people about olfactory health and the many benefits that are right under your nose. So in this video, we're going to go over the anatomical reasons why we can train our sense of smell. We'll go over the practical ways that a person can do it, and then what to expect if you too decide to train your nose. So for a bit of background on how our sense of smell works, let's back up all the way to all of our senses. All of our senses use cell receptors in order to translate information from our environment and send a signal that gets processed in our brains. So you can imagine your skin as one giant sense organ has cell receptors all over it. But for our skin, they'll be concentrated in different amounts in different areas. So for example, your fingertips have a higher concentration of cell receptors than your elbow. But unlike most of our senses, like our sense of touch, the cell receptors for our sense of smell are exposed. If you went far enough up your nose, you'd kind of make contact with the cell receptors for your olfactory system or your sense of smell. They're embedded in kind of a mucousy, hairy mixture of goo way up there. And speaking of cell receptors, let's talk about cell receptor types. In other words, how many different types that we have. For context, our sense of sight has two different cell receptor types. You might have heard of rods and cones before. For our sense of touch, we have 4 different types. Our olfactory sense has around 400 different cell receptor types. And so we'll have different cell receptors in our olfactory system that are specializing in different kinds of odors. Researchers used to speculate that we could differentiate about 10,000 different odors, but recent research suggests that could be actually a number closer to the trillions. And so your sense of smell is probably capable of way more than you've been asking of it. And let's speculate 2 reasons that make our sense of smell trainable. 1. Because these cell receptor neurons are exposed to the environment, they renew about every 4 weeks throughout the lifespan. Otherwise, they would just wear out, and after a certain point, we wouldn't smell anymore. When we're training them in one way, they have the capacity to come back stronger and more capable. And then looking at how our sense of smell wires directly into our hippocampus, where we process long-term memories, we have an incredible capacity to recall and memorize smell. Some people will be better than others at being able to train their sense of smell, but this is something that anyone can do. And when it comes to training our sense of smell, there's 2 different properties to think about. One is the actual strength of your olfactory sense, and the other is your capacity to differentiate and distinguish different odors. Training one does not always include increasing the other. So a wine sommelier quite literally trains their nose to better differentiate different smells. So if you're watching this, you yourself could order a wine sommelier training kit online and start to teach your nose to differentiate different odors. Many people can recognize a scent but can't name what it is. This isn't a problem with their olfactory sense, it's just a matter of not having trained to differentiate odors before. So training your nose in this way will make you better able to distinguish and differentiate scents, and that will also transfer over to food since most of our experience of flavor is scent-based. And with a memories kit, we're focusing on olfactory training, which is particularly focused at strengthening or rehabilitating your sense of smell. So in this case, instead of just trying to differentiate different odors, we're just engaging with single odors one at a time and intentionally smelling them as closely as possible. My own experiences using a smell training kit were really interesting because, as far as I knew, I think I had a healthy sense of smell when I started. But as I did my olfactory training twice a day, day after day, the odors started to change. It was almost like the signal they were coming through started to get broader. There was more lemon, more rose, more clove. It was fascinating to watch as my sense of smell got stronger and the odors developed more depth and complexity, even the same ones I'd been smelling for weeks. And this translated into more enjoyment of food. I've become one of those people now who exclaims out loud how delicious things are almost every meal. I chalk this up to most of us understimulating our sense of smell for most of our lives, so that even someone with a healthy olfactory system, if they start doing olfactory training and strengthening it, they'll start to notice changes. I haven't taken any semantic or verbal recall tests or cognition tests, but these are other benefits that have been shown when a person does olfactory training. One of the things I love about olfactory training is that it is quite literally brain training. When we think about training our brains, we often think about doing logic or puzzles or challenging problems that we have to think hard about. But this is actually changing brain structures, and it's changing the ones that send signals direct to our limbic area, the regions where we process emotion and memory. When they've done fMRI scans before and after a person does olfactory training, they see structural changes all throughout the olfactory system and the related areas. And so training your sense of smell can have all sorts of fun implications. If we train ourselves to better differentiate odors, we're going to become more attuned to the food that we're eating, the odors around us, and just more engaged with life in general. And if we do olfactory training and we strengthen our sense of smell, there are all sorts of downstream benefits that are unfolding in our brain. In another video, we'll go into further detail on this, but cognitive reserve is the brain's capacity to work around different issues. And so they've done studies with Alzheimer's patients who, on paper, look like they are ill, but when acting outwardly seem like they're doing just fine. This is due to what scientists call cognitive reserve. These are usually people who have led very intellectually stimulating adult lives, giving their brains more ways to work around a neuropathology as opposed to succumbing to it. Researchers are speculating that having an understimulated sense of smell leaves us more at risk to neurological diseases we may be predisposed to. So olfactory training may also increase your brain's capacity to work around different neurological issues as they arise. So can you train your nose? Absolutely. And having read the research, it seems like a no-brainer for anyone. If you'd like to learn more, I'm posting about all the things that I love about olfactory training and olfactory health, or you can always send me an email. I love answering questions.